Hey guys, Indie Dave Comics here. Doing a little fireside chat. Talk a little bit about Comicsgate, a little bit about consumer movements, and what I think of all this kind of stuff. As everybody knows, Ethan Van Sciver left the hashtag behind, Comicsgate. I guess that means different things to different people. What it means to him is he doesn't have to be associated with anything Comicsgate related. Any little thing that happens, basically, his Twitter would fill up. Hey, why don't you stop this thing? Why don't you take control of your people? Whatever. People he's not responsible for. Bunch of adults. We're going to talk a little bit about consumer movements. Comicsgate has been called a consumer movement, and it may be. But what a consumer movement implies is that money is changing hands between the producer and the consumer. If you're going to have that kind of relationship, then you cannot pick one side over the other as far as which side's more important. To be a good producer, you need to either provide something that people didn't know they wanted, or you need to provide something that the customer has been asking for, but nobody has been providing. What the customer currently has been asking for, as far as Comicsgate is concerned, is better comics without ham-fisted messages and without creators calling you pieces of shit. What's happened is somebody's come in to fill that void, and there's been sort of a misunderstanding about what the movement is. The people who come in to fill in that void, Ethan Van Sciver, Diversity in Comics, Brightweiser, John Malin, all those types, their whole goal was to provide an alternative to the comics that people were complaining about. They were successful. Ethan was especially successful. Ethan, Diversity in Comics. And suddenly, people were seeing them as the leader of this big movement, Comicsgate. In leaving, Ethan has kind of taken himself out of the running because he really didn't want to deal with the kind of crap that he had to deal with. As a producer, which is what he is, he needs to produce his product, and he needs to, and that involves making money. And there's my dog. That's Nova, going nutty because of the neighbors. So anyway, I'm sorry. So anyway, knock it off. So the producer, to continue producing, has to make money. If he's not making money, then he's not going to produce. He's going to go do something else. And if he makes a lot of money, that's even better, because he can continue producing and making a better product. What I'm hearing, or what it sounds like to me, I'm not prepared to pretend I know what everybody's thinking, what everybody's saying. What it looks like to me is people want the producer side to be in charge of Comicsgate. That's all well and good. If you want it to be just the consumer part, then that needs to be laid out. What Ethan's done is he's basically said, okay, well, if that's what you want, then I'm going to go over here and make these comic books. Hopefully you like them, and hopefully you buy them, and hopefully we can be that answer. That's what he wants. He wants to be the answer and provide you with comics and make some money so that he can continue making comic books, because that's what he enjoys doing. If Comicsgate is going to continue as a consumer movement, then they need to, then we or they or whoever, I don't know what side I'm on right now. I believe in the ideals of Comicsgate. I believe it is a consumer movement. But I'm really tired of people that don't understand that part of the consumer movement has to involve the people that are making the comics. People who are talking about gatekeeping and all this other stuff, and to me, everything went off the rails. I think everything can come back. I don't think we necessarily have to have a hashtag Comicsgate group of people. It can remain a loose group. It's much better to have a moving target than to have one guy in charge of everything, even if it's just perceived. It is much better for them to swat at a swarm of bees than it is to have one charging bear where they can find the right firearm to take care of it. I'm working on moving into that producer section of which is away from Comicsgate, I guess. I don't know if we still want producers in Comicsgate. I don't know if there can be a definition for what Comicsgate is and what it's going to become. It has to change. That's just the nature of the beast. I'm not saying it has to change because there's something wrong with it. I'm saying it has to change because eventually it's just a bunch of whining and crying. I'm not saying everybody's whining and crying right now. I think there are some that are. But it has to become the movement has to change because it has to have goals. If the goals are better comics, then do we need better comics from the old companies, or do we want new, better comics? Maybe we want both. That would be great. Ideally, what you want to happen is you have the mainstream guys, Marvel, DC, and they're going all SJW, and they're not making any money anymore. We got this alternative over here, and they're making and we want them to start making a bunch of money. You say, well, that doesn't help me. I want to keep reading Spider-Man. And that doesn't help me keep reading my favorite character, Spider-Man. Well, it's not an immediate turn. If you want to keep reading Spider-Man, you keep reading Spider-Man. If you don't like what they're doing with Spider-Man, you can either keep reading it or you can stop reading it. If enough people stop reading Spider-Man, their main Marvel character, then eventually they're going to have to start looking. It's not a fast turn. It's not immediate improvement. They're going to have to start looking. Somebody's going to start looking at the books and saying, look, you're not making money anymore. And if you're not making money anymore, then we're going to have to start firing people. Or we're going to have to shut you down completely. And then somebody's going to have to go, oh shit, we're done for. We need to make a change. Well, they need to start looking at who's successful. If they want to keep on with the politics, then they're going to lose. The company's going to go out of business, it's going to go under, or it's at least going to sell so few that they're going to become an indie company. They're going to look at all caps. They're going to look at some of these indie books. They're going to look at Blacklist Universe. And they're going to say, why are those guys making so much money? They're a bunch of little upstarts. Nazis that I don't understand, because they've been calling us Nazis for years. Well, eventually they're going to have to look and see what makes them a better company. And they're going to have to try to emulate them or in some way improve themselves so that they can match up with these little companies, because it's embarrassing. They're going to get embarrassed by little upstart companies. Just like in the 90s, they were embarrassed by Image when they were selling the same as Marvel in their first year. There's a bunch to say about Image too, but maybe we'll just wrap this up here in a little bit. What I feel about Comicsgate is that Comicsgate's a word. It doesn't really mean anything. Half the time, people didn't like it anyway. If you want to call it something else, call it something else. If you don't want a Comicsgate movement anymore, at least you don't want a big target on your back, this is Comicsgate on it, then don't call it anything. Everybody knows what we want. Set up some goals and understand that this is not what, understand that, we don't need a hashtag to rally behind. We all just, need to either buy what we want to buy and let these big guys know, hey, we're done with you. We'd still love to buy your Spider-Mans. We'd still love to buy your Batmans. We want to buy your Supermans, but you're going to have to fix it. Fix this now. You don't need to do that behind a hashtag. They see the big group. Now they need to see the money. The money appears to be going towards the all caps, the Blacklist universe, the Indiegogo books. Any business that has any sense is going to follow that money, and they're going to see where they can either get it back or make their own. So, that's my Fireside Chat. I'm Indie Dave Comics. Have a good night.
Please hang up and try again.